This material is made available to you by or on behalf of the University of Melbourne under Section 113P of the Copyright Act 1968. It may be subject to copyright. For more information, visit the University Copyright website.
Dr. Zachary Dunbar is a senior lecturer here in theatre at the VCA and Performing Arts Research Convenor. He was raised in Florida. He started as a concert pianist and trained at Yale School of Music and the Royal College of Music in London. He has over 25 years of experience directing theatre and musical theatre. Zachary completed his PhD on Greek theatre chorus and subsequently joined the staff at Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in London, where he taught music theatre and Greek tragedy. He has scholarly publications in the field of music theatre, classics and acting. His latest co-authored book with Steph Harrop, Greek Tragedy and the Contemporary Actor, was published in 2018 by Palgrave Macmillan and is a wonderful read. I love it and have used it in my own teaching. All of my students have been assigned readings from that book. Welcome, Zachary.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks very much. Jonathan, can I get this thing up on the PowerPoint? Oh, there it is. Okay. Let's see if this works. Hello. This is quite a provocation, actually. The email was sent on the 7th of August at 11:17 in the morning while I was practicing the piano. And I've actually never thought why this website was designed the way it was. I sort of realized that I was doing three things in my life. And yet, I don't think it's accidental that the musician happened first in looking at that image, and that the academic sits in the middle, and it really shouldn't. It should be a little bit to the side. In fact, these should be Russian dolls, you know, inside each other, thinking and doing. So I've talked a lot in public about what interdisciplinarity is, or transdisciplinary, and I think this is the narrative of my life. I've never really questioned it. However, this term personal paradigm troubled me. I didn't quite know what that meant, or what I was supposed to sort of devise out of that. And so I thought maybe instead of launching into a lot of meta theory, I would play you what I was playing when I received this email, because I was learning this piece by Tchaikovsky, a very simple piece called Valse Sentimentale, or Sentimental Waltz. And I thought, well, perhaps if I played there, I might divine what sort of a personal paradigm. So what I'm interpreting about that is there some sort of through line that has taken me from the 25, 30 years of training as a musician that is the precondition for my impulses of when I do critical thinking. I mean, that's sort of embodied behind the way I think and do critical writing. Is it there? I mean, is one conscious of it? And I thought, well, I actually have never asked myself that question. It's not that when I'm writing, I'm playing a symphony. It's not that. I mean, what is it that I was so obsessed about as a concert pianist, or as a lot of musicians are obsessed to trying to be able to do when they perform? And I think, so what I'm going to do for this presentation is take you there through the performance and sort of do a kind of journey. Well, if that's the case, how does this actually read through into the critical writing, or does it? It's a bit solipsistic. It's talking about me a lot. And in fact, I rarely talk about my other work. So it's actually an opportunity for me to journey through this and to actually stand in the place we often ask our master students to stand, and to talk about what is your white heat impulse that brings you to critical thinking. So this is quite exploratory, and I hope you enjoy it. I notice all of you are sitting kind of where you can see the pianist's hands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up, and you're going to see words flash up as I play, and it's purposely orchestrated because, in fact, that's what I'm thinking as I'm doing when I'm playing the piano. So also just a little bit about the piece. It's such a simple salon piece, very, very small, very intimate, and it's actually it represents a typical lyrical piece in that it's very vocal. It sounds like somebody singing, and it repeats the theme as a structural device over and over again. So the challenge to the musician is, how do you express different forms of sentimental emotion each time you come back to that place without it sounding staged, but that it appears spontaneously? Yeah? So just to give you, so it's a thinking and doing thing that's about to happen. I just memorized it too, but I'm just going to bring my music over just in case I forget. kind of an impossibility. But this idea of expressing songfulness or song is something I think has always been prevalent through a lot of my practical work. And it's found itself through theater and text, particularly song and text. So basically how does one approximate songfulness is what is constantly at the forefront of what at least the pianist is trying to do. I'll just take you just quickly through the narrative of my interdisciplinarity. So as an undergraduate, I did a lot of sort of liberal arts college stuff. I even did my thesis in philosophy of religion. Then I went to music school, and then I went further on to Rollins College of Music. So basically, interdisciplinarity has been part of what I've been doing. But at the end of all that, I was your proverbial 19th century sort of romantic guy. Okay, what do I do with all this interdisciplinarity? The kid is like this. And more importantly, living in London is, how the fuck am I going to make any money out of it? It's just not going to happen. So what I was doing is I was also working in fringe theater, and then this started happening at the point where both musician and theater was sort of coming together. And it was this, really. There were three productions. I for some reason got obsessed with Oedipus for some reason. I mean, in our very post-structuralist thinking, I don't know why we still go to Oedipus as the kind of formal, linear drama that we look at as a paradigm. So what I did is I first wrote an oratorio on it, and I kind of used this kind of framing of a chorus, telling the story from some kind of Midwestern town of some kind of person coming out of the desert and marrying the mayor's wife and causing the plague to happen. And all the classicists hated it when they saw it, but it didn't matter because I was actually already starting to play with how do you take this text and just play with it, and also tell it non-linearly so it doesn't go forward, or it just goes forward and backwards. But it was really this one here, taking the idea of Oedipus and going towards this anthropomorphic reimagining of the chorus as mad cows stuck in a barn in Delphi, Texas, with a radio playing evangelical preaching day after day after day. So this is mad cow disease. And then saying, what would happen then to the text if I did that? And at the same time also wrote a radio drama in London for World AIDS Day, which actually was playing on the theme of somebody from Corinth and Thebes coming together and the spread of plague during the 80s. But anyway, it was this one here that sort of got me thinking. Because, among other things, it was this idea of playing with text as song. And I'm going to now illustrate that to you. So, very quick Greek tragedy lesson here in 1 minute. This is the first parados, the first chorus of Oedipus. It's one of the most prolonged and dramatic of the choral odes. And just essentially, I'm not going to go through the meanings of it, but it's structured in such a way that the first part is an invocation to the gods to come down and help this plague-ridden situation. The middle part is a graphic diagnosis of what that looks like at the moment, so it's the plague. And at the very end, it actually starts to name the god that is part of the problem down here. And sort of for Dionysus to come down through and to establish order. So it's chaos, more chaos in the middle, and then order in the end. And then this was my rewriting of it for those mad cows. Now, you're sort of looking at going, okay, there's a lot of words up there, but in fact, I'm going to try to do this for you. Are you ready? No, you're not ready for me to. But before I do, I just have to sort of point out that there are 5 people doing this. It's polyphonic. You have one person doing this, one of the younger cows. I'm but a stray, I'm but a maverick, I'm but a poor lamb, lost my way, bad and hard, all very talking to self. And then there's sort of a head cow that sort of does things. Here it goes into a kind of huge stampede-like momentum, which becomes very apocalyptic, and you'll see it's very kind of biblical as well. It's using that kind of words from the Bible. And over here, then you have this I could sort of illustrate that for you. So it goes like this. Sweet, sweet, what is it? Voice of light. Wells Fargo, golden voice. Sweet, what is it? Sweet, what is it? Sweet voice of light. Heaven sent. Wound me, heal me. Wound me, heal me. And then you have one of the ones going, I'm but a stray, I'm but a maverick, I'm but a poor lamb lost her way. Brand me on high, make me your bride. Brand me on high, make me your high. Clap your hands, all you people. Hope, cleave. Hope, pray. Hope, whip, crack. Us doggies home today. So it's a kind of like, it's sort of snatching this sort of beginning of the herd moving. And then A2 is whoop-ti-I, 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 get along, get along, get along, get along, get along. God be in my head, God be in my heart. So it becomes very evangelical. And then B1 is a kind of description. The dead scatter high, cow licked, hard stabbed, the chalk soil, vultures making lazy circles in the sky, thirstin', thirstin', burstin' from thirstin'. Man, no how can't square the circle. It also sounds like an auction, if you've got to hear it. Moving on. And we, the living, gather wide, wide as the God-fearing Texas is wide and forgiving. The longhorns of Cadmus are passing down her main streets now. Newborn calves seated head first, who learn first the taste of the hoof-beaten earth. Filled and sick of miles of lowing, gray-haired heifered mothers, ply blackened tongues and eyes a-lolling, turning circles for the crater in the sky like the unholy, unborn assembly in the soiled dove's sickened wombs, cursed in due time with stabbing pains. On and on it goes, and then it sort of builds up into this kind of, for our fight it is with the quiver and the shake, sweet, 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 what voice is it? For our fight it is with the shiver and the quake, for our find to stand and fall, it just builds and builds, and so by people polyphonically moving to, in their kind of somatic rhythms, to this point where they all haw at the very end, and then the cow leader says, and the moo shall be for the cow, and the haw shall sound for the bull, and the udder shall fill with milk, and the hooves will stand very still. And the farmer will talk to their cattle, and the cow shall jump over the moon, and the good will be cut from the chattel, and the voice will call cows home soon. So I was just starting to do that. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was just doing this. I was wondering, okay, why am I doing this? Why am I playing with text? And I thought I would then do a whole. PhD in any one of these topics. However, I was a failed practice as research PhD person. I admit it. In fact, I failed. In fact, I didn't do one. Oh, everyone looked up at that one. I did a history PhD. But note, it is still dealing with the singing chorus. It is still dealing with a very sort of interdisciplinary situation. So I was doing case studies. I wanted to know first what other people did through history since the 5th century to 1929, before I positioned myself in that space. So I did a whole PhD first. Basically, it's a positioning PhD. I know, you call me sadomasochist. So 3 publications came off the bat, which are very historiographical, but you'll also see that they're also very interdisciplinary. What is interdisciplinary within theory, reception theory in Greek tragedy? In music theater, mixing Greek tragedy and Hammerstein's Allegro. Over here, talk about a chorus line in Dionysian Reflections. And over here, talk about music theater. So I was very much a historiographical person. However, 3 things, and this is kind of like the nub of really what I want to get to, is where's the personal paradigm of what I just did, and how did it start going to practice as research? It was really these 3 that did it for me. The first one was this. I was asked to write a chapter on a particular piece that I did, and I'm going to show it to you in a second. Secondly, is also reflecting on practice as research at the Central School of Speech and Drama, where people were doing hundreds of masters in musical theater, but not being able to stage practice as research. And finally, this, which is the consolidation of all the thinking and doing in text and movement. So what I want to do is I want to play this for you, because this is where I suddenly started to learn about the post-dramatic, started to learn about what does it mean to actually deal with text that's not in a linear frame. So I'm just going to play it for you. And this is going further from what Delphi, Texas was. It's just taking 5 human beings who are mute, and they are moving from one side of a room to the other. They're plague-ridden. In other words, they have cellular gestures which sort of infect the group, but they never make it to the other side. They somehow have to rewind and start all over. So it's the idea of this thing of the cows coming home. However, I had to say text over there in a kind of spectral place, and I found it incredibly difficult to say the text in this space, because every time I opened my mouth, I could already see there was intention, there was meaning, there was something I did not want to say. You see, this whole conundrum about speaking text. So I'll just play a little bit of that for you, and then you'll see what I mean. Okay, so to cut a long story short, the article that came out then was dealing with this issue. Sorry. Was dealing with this issue. Okay, this is the first line, just even the first line I had to say at a moment that was very pregnant in terms of movement, because there was so much saturation in watching the auditory clues. And so how does text arrive? So just a very opening line, let me say before I go any further that I forgive nobody. This is taken from a Samuel Beckett piece. If I started here, let me say, if I did that, starting the upper range of the speaking voice overly anticipates the intensity of the moment and adds unwelcome melodrama. If I started with a mic like this, suddenly you have ghostly and disembodied sound that goes with it. If I did a cadence, let me say before I go any further that I forgive nobody, a kind of diminuendo in the phrase sounded resigned. If I said it, let me say before I go any further that I forgive nobody, there's unnatural measures of phrases gave the text a sense of being read rather than said. If I said it monosyllabically, let me say before I go any further that I forgive nobody, its overtly denotative account evoked an automaton rather than a live being. Do you see how this just fragments into all possible? And this is what post-dramatic is trying to frame. Now, therefore, in the article, I just found the critical framework to be able to deal with that. And this is my first exercise, actually, in kind of practice as research assessment of what I did in practice. But it was to do with singing a text, saying, but all the melodic intentions of the saying of text. So that's coming out of my musical embodied knowledge. I won't go much into this, but this was an exercise in again, how does one stage practice this research in musical theater? It wasn't practice-based, but it sort of had to be talked about because many, many people were bringing their own musical embodied knowledge as composers, as actors, as directors, as writers of libretto, and also wearing different hats in the room. And so how do you talk as a composer and also as a writer of text when you're dealing, with musical theater issues? The last one I want to talk about is this, because this then now takes it into a higher order of training, which is both about singing text, but also somatics, and also about movement, and also about iconic work in actors' bodies. And this has formed the framework of my critical thinking then in Greek tragedy and the contemporary actor. So I was asked to stage the Bacchae at the Embassy Theatre at Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, which is a training school for classical acting. So very text-based, but at the same time, some movement-based work as well. If anybody knows the Bacchae, it's about the god Dionysus and the followers, the Bacchic followers, and his revenge on a particular unbeliever called Pentheus. Now, I wanted to just play with the idea of bivocal and so seeing two ways, duality, seeing two ways, and also hearing two ways. So in this case, the actors embodied themselves in iconic figures, Hollywood figures from the 30s, which meant that they had to live up and amp up into epic-sized voices and bodies, and not their own. And the Dionysian figure was actually a shared duet between a male and female voice. Spatially, I was also playing with the idea that you see they're sitting in an audience, just as you are here. The audience was on the stage, and they were watching the audience instead of them watching the other way around. And the stage itself was a sound stage, like as in a movie stage. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play you two areas again where the text is kind of being sung in a kind of polyphonic way, and you'll hear them both, but at the same time now this movement that's kind of coming into it. So let me just do that really quickly. So this is the opening chorus again, and it's very badly recorded, but you'll kind of get what I mean by the affect of the polyphonic, which is both dissonant but also very sort of storytelling.
Bear witness to me.
I'll go join my Bacchae on Mount Kythira.
So they're watching the audience on stage.
From Phrygia, we follow Dionysus from hard work, sweet work, in honor of Seneca's son. You want to scream pure in the house, show the reverence due. Our song
Is the true song. We sing it now.
for you.
Blessed he who knows the mysteries of the gods, who lives a life devoted,
Who let's have spirits soar and so unified, wild mountain dancing,
ordained by Mother Earth, who with the ivy-covered shafts
and ivy-plated hair,
raised the young.
Dionysus. Let the priest of Dionysus lead out from deepest Asia, the wide streets of the West. Dionysus,
Son of Zeus.
Tell, Dionysus, tell how he cracked from his mother's womb, by the lightning bolt of Zeus, how Zeus hit him in his thigh, those fast with golden pins, out of Hera's vengeful sight. So was the bull-headed god who wears the green of snakes, bold as the fates decreed.
tell of Dionysus, tell how cracked from his mother's womb, by the lightning bolt of Zeus, how Zeus hit him in his thigh, those fast with golden pins, out of Hera's vengeful sight.
so full of fear? Why lie you upon the ground? Do you not see?
Bind you fast, both hand and foot? It is he who is now bound in blindness. He thought he'd hold me prisoner in his house. He hoped to bestow on me a thorough beating, yet he did not lay a hand on me. Instead, upon entering the stables, he saw a bull, and to this bull he ran, howling, panting with rage, spitting revenge, and grabbing the bull, he mounted hoof to hoof, while I sat by and watched most peacefully. Then Dionysus really took control. He shook the palace to its foundations, and from the tomb of Semele sent flames. So Pentheus, thinking his house on fire, ran up and down, calling for water to be fetched from the river right away. His slaves set about this pointless task, while Pentheus, thinking I'd run indoors, drew his sword and rushed inside after me. Then the god himself, it seemed to me, in the shape of a tremendous shadow cast from a cloudless sky, appeared. So Pentheus rushed at it, the shadow, and tried to stab it, thinking it was me. Not content with this humiliation, the god had further plans for punishment. He toppled the palace at this Pentheus, who dropped his sword and dropped to his knees, defeated. The price of my imprisonment was high for him. Then I came here, a free man. As for Pentheus, not that I really care for Pentheus, but he too now comes this way.
Okay, so do you see what I mean? I'm using a very duet. You can hear the male and female voice. It's playing as a flute, almost like two flutes. But also their rhythmical, somatic framings also of the body is now part of this kind of musicality, the singing of the body with the text. So what I'll do is, I've got about 5 more minutes, and what I'll do is I'll just tell you what's sort of happening now with my work. Let me just get rid of this. Oh, so anyway, it led to this book, and we've got it in the library, so please don't go out and buy this book. It's incredibly, ridiculously expensive. But you'll notice that even the framing of the chapters is dealing with sound first in chapter 4, not acting, not telling the story, but actually sound. And I'll skip this bit here about the introduction, because if I read this to you, this is probably the manifesto then of my practice. The reperformance of ancient drama requires a physical vocal response attuned to the text-rich seam of rhythms, breath patterns, complex shaping of dramatic verse, and the sensory quality of words. This chapter examines the relationship of music and poetry in ancient Athens and its performance culture. Most English-speaking actors probably will encounter the text of tragedy via translation, and offers the chapter's main case study. However, this chapter argues that such encounters with ancient plays still require deep excavation of musical and metrical structures and their somatic promptings, proving a series of practical exercises to support the process. And the other thing that this book also has, it actually has practical exercise elements that go with the scholarly analysis. So this is also the crossover between the academic and the practical studio, and also still the concern of how do we make this sound? What are phrases? What are rhythms? That comes from elementally my training as a musician. So finally, what I'd like to leave you with is this current thing that I'm doing. It's a bilingual translation of Sweet Charity into Mandarin, which I'm doing with Ray Po, who was a former master's director here. The idea here is that it's not just a translation. It actually is moved to 1930s Shanghai, where they did have women, what they called taxi rank dancers in Shanghai. So there were the Sweet Charity paradigms, even earlier than New York's version of the 60s. But the important thing is here, we've started to do this work, is that it's a study of, again, this duality, the bilingual idea of what does it sound like when these characters, these Anglo-European characters, are translated into another language. So what is the sound, and therefore what does the sound do to the body, and therefore how does the body then become re-encultured? And by appropriating, of course, a 1930s style movement, we're moving away from the Bob Fosse expressionist outward display of the women to a more internalized Chinese female. And I'm just going to play you a little bit of Big Spender in Mandarin. Would you like to hear that? Okay. Now, you will hear that Big Spender itself, the two words, are not translated because in the 30s, they were actually appropriating English words into their their acknowledgement of becoming more Western. So I'll see what it sounds like. So that's a click track, you know that.
当你走过我身旁，我能感觉你是多么的高尚，我虔诚大方，又好看还有教养。难道你不想知道我在想些什么？好吧，我就直截了当。不是每个男人我都会爱上。Hey, Big Spender， 花一点点时间陪我。
Now, the interesting thing in choreographing that is that we're not doing Bob Fosse. Is you're in this kind of costume and. Sorry, Sweet Cherry, you can't do that. Oh, gosh, now it's Sweet Cherry's guy. So we're really interested not only in how the language inflects with the body, but also then how do we move it from this kind of 60s over-sexualized body to one that is still within the Confucian value system in Shanghai's 30s. But then it's still encountering the West. So my idea then, again, of just singing through text is now incorporating body, incorporating culture. It's starting to expand more and more into those directions. But I'm still interested in the sound and what the text is doing. And then finally, still keeping up with the academic writing is, of course, this latest chapter, which is going in the Oxford Handbook of Global Music Theatre, dealing with writers and performers in musical theatre. So that's enough of me talking about myself. I hope I kind of tried to explain. I hope that kind of made sense, that it was going from here, that it's about sound, text, then body, and then meaning, and how it's kind of amassing all these things. But in a sense, that's what academic work does. It critically allows you to escape these, siloed training and to keep going, well, I can actually coexist in these concentric circles of activities quite easily, although I was already doing it, but now I kind of know why I'm doing it, I suppose. All right, that's me done. Thanks. Can
I ask a question?
Yes, you're right.
That's okay. I'm curious about, there's something that's sitting here that I would like to hear you talk a little more about, which is about Stanislavski and musical theatre. I know you've written about this, and for me, there's this one little keg that's sort of sitting there.
Okay, so the question is about Stanislavski-based training or approaches and musical theatre. It's often the default, in fact it is the main default in musical theatre training, acting, that people use Stanislavski-based approaches. So what I mean by that is more sort of the analytical, what-ifs, given circumstances, objectives, super-objectives, imagination, all that. Particularly because the way into trying to teach people to convey emotions and to look, relatively passable as real on stage is to turn the text into a monologic kind of dialogue or words, which then you can work with as an actor would work with just simple text. The problem there is the anomalies are just several, and in fact there's a couple of researchers in the room who are dealing with this right now, is that when you sing, you're using different physiology, and you're also incorporating different imaginations that is not necessarily the imagination of the actor speaking text. So when you put those two things together, there is a negotiation in the hierarchy of what you're actually listening to and what you're conveying. Also with dance preconditions you and predisposes you to particular embodied physiology, which lends itself to kinds of imagination and choices, which are not necessarily what an actor who's untrained in dancing would use. So the thing about musical theater is it's a very interdisciplinary art form, and within each discipline there are already anomalies, but when you put three together, it's an exponential difficulty that starts to occur. So that's kind of... Do you want me to play you one more piece, maybe 3 minutes, and then that's it? I think that's probably better, yeah, okay. The other thing a pianist has to do is not just create a voice, but also to mimic things in nature or to mimic other instruments. This is a Chopin etude nicknamed the